Hey guys, it's Tom M from Tabletop Republic, and I am doing my first ever budget deck tech on this channel. The commander is Yurlok of Scorch Thrash. 1 black, red, green for a 4/4 with vigilance. A player losing unspent mana causes them to lose that much life, and for 1 untapping, each player adds black, red, green. So it's essentially just brings back mana burn from the old days of Magic. And in this budget deck, I'm going to show you how to get a really good 100 card ready commander deck based around this commander. I've been using Axiom now prices. Obviously, you might have some of these cards already, or you might find them cheaper on other sites. I just chose Axiom because they're, sort of local to us. Got to support a local business, and they pretty much had every single card on this list. So it comes to less than £45. I'll put the prices of each card below each card. But let's just go through and see what I'm putting in this deck. Obviously, feel free to comment any cards you think I may have missed. At the end, I'm going to do some cards which were just a bit out of the budget. I could have increased it to £50, but £45 sounds a bit cheaper, which is nice. So yeah, let's go on through. Yurlok, of course, got to have the commander in there. He was £1.25. I believe this was when he was on pre-order, because I did all these prices before Commander Legends actually came out. So obviously it might have changed now, but this pretty much just shows what this deck is about. So main thing, mana burn. Obviously, from the olden days of Magic, if you didn't spend mana, you would lose life for each mana you left open, which is Yurlok's ability. Essentially, I'm going to be giving all my opponents a bunch of free mana. However, they will lose life if this mana is not spent. I've got Land Group Hug, basically giving my opponents lots of land. However, a few little bits which make them either tap all their land or have to spend lots of it and giving them a bunch of free mana. Land Hatred, so there's not pure land destruction in this deck. There's 1 or 2 cards which are destroying lands, just in case there's those annoying mazes of Iths or something like that. And Death by Damage, obviously. It's a black-red deck with a bit of green ramp in there, so of course it's going to be damage-based ones. So yeah, in these first few cards are all cards which gift mana to myself and opponents, so I'll just go through them all. So first up, Belle from Commander Legends. At the beginning of each player's post-combat main phase, that player adds 2 colourless mana for each of your opponents who lost life this turn. So obviously, on your turn, if you manage to deal 1 damage to each opponent on your upkeep from perhaps a shrine or something similar, you get 6 colourless mana to spend. This also applies to your opponent, so if they have cards which deal damage every upkeep, they'll get 6 free mana. However, they've got to spend it. Card just comes under £1, probably go down in value since it's brand new. Next up, Blinkmoth Urn. At the beginning of each player's pre-combat main phase, if Blinkmoth Urn is untapped, they add colourless for each artifact they control. Pretty much this will never be tapped, so it'll apply every turn. Again, you're going to get quite a few colourless mana. Obviously, I get at least 1 if I've got this on the board, but your opponents, it's going to make them struggle if they get Smothering Tithe, treasure artifacts, or if it's an artifact based deck. This pretty much will affect everyone on the board. Dictate of Karametra. It's a flash enchantment. Whenever a player taps a land for mana, they add 1 of that type as well. So you get one of those double mana type cards. 71p, it's pretty good for that, but 5 mana won't be quick on the draw to get that one out. Eladamri's Vineyard. At the beginning of each player's main phase, player adds 2 green mana to their mana pool. £1.50 for this, bit expensive just because it's 1 mana. Now the best part about Eladamri's Vineyard is that if your opponent who is adding those 2 green mana isn't in a green deck, they've got nothing to use it on unless they can use it on colourless mana. So, you could use it to get out an Arcane Signet, the 2 green mana. But if they're running a mono blue deck and they haven't got anything where you could use it, they're going to lose that mana and it's going to be burnt. Next up, Heartbeat of Spring. Again, just another, whenever you tap a land, you get twice the mana. Applies to everyone. £1, just reprinted in Double Masters. Keeper of Progenitus. Almost said that wrong. Whenever a player taps a mountain, forest or plains, it gets double mana, so double mana for everyone except the Domars colours, about £1 for that one as well. These are sort of like where the regular sort of cards you will need in this deck to make people get a lot of mana. Then Magus of the Vineyard, very similar to Eldamari's Vineyard. You add 2 green. Again, just 2 free mana each turn for everyone. If they don't have green, they're going to be a bit more screwed. Then Shizuko, Call of Autumn. So this one has been errated, obviously, because mana burn doesn't exist anymore. So it ignores this mana doesn't cause mana burn. So they get 3 extra mana. However, it doesn't empty until the end of their turn. Because it doesn't say as phases and turns end, it just says as phases end. So it'll go out at the end of the turn, still causing Yurlok's ability to trigger. Then Spectral Searchlight, a mana rock that could affect anyone. So I choose when to tap it. It could just be for me if I need it, but if someone, on the end of someone's turn, if they're just like, oh no, I've got, if I've got Yurlok out and they don't have any mana burn yet, I could just tap it on their end step, causing them to lose a life. Then Stadium Vendors, a bit of a chump blocker, but when he enters, someone gets 2 free mana. So if they don't have any instants to play and I play this on my turn, it's going to cause them to lose 2 life, pretty much, with Yurlok. Then Tangle Root. Whenever a player plays a creature, they add a green mana. Again, there's a lot of green mana ramp in this one. But this is quite a good card because it's also going to make people not play as many creatures. I can't remember what the errata text is. I believe it is when a player casts a creature. So it doesn't affect tokens, which would make it even better. Then one of the slightly more expensive cards, Tectonic Instability. When a land comes into play, tap all lands its controller controls. So, if they play a land, they're going to have to tap all their lands in response if they want to use that mana. So they probably won't do it until after combat or bits like that. But it does include me. However, I've got ways around this. But yeah, these kind of cards are going to make opponents tap all their mana if they want to use it. Otherwise, then they're only going to get that they're going to get no mana at all each turn. Then Victory Chimes, again very similar to Spectral Searchlight. It untaps every turn, and it taps for a colourless mana. So you can use that colourless mana for myself, or what I'd probably do is on each opponent's end step, just keep tapping it. Quite cheap, that one, 50p as well. War's Toll, this one is very cheap. Again, whenever an opponent taps a land for mana, tap all lands they control, but also, if a creature an opponent controls attacks, all creatures that opponent controls attack if able. So it sort of goads each player, but they can attack you. But again, a bit cheaper than Tectonic Instability, but twice as good effect, I'd say. And finally, Zhur-Taa Ancient. Again, just when a player taps a land for mana, they add one of that type. So another double mana card, but this one's a bit cheaper and quite good. 5 mana, 7/5 as well. So quite good. Just you could just whack him into someone as well. And yeah, part 2, the damage related cards. So these are the cards that will damage your opponent either due to lands or just for being red cards. So first up we've got Ankh of Mishra. When a land enters, that it deals 2 damage to that land's controller. Pretty good. Will stop a bunch of ramping up decks. Obviously this is a bit green, so it has got a bit of ramp. But, you know, what's a red-black deck if you don't have doesn't have a bit of self-sacrifice. Burning Earth, I really like this one. For less than 50p, when a player taps a non-basic land for mana, it deals 1 damage to that player. So, you know, if you have those players in your pod that have no basics and have all the you know, really expensive non-basic lands and the savannas and the overgrown tombs and stuff, you know, it's going to do a bit of damage to them. You know, 1 damage if it taps, and if they manage to untap it, it could do multiple damage per turn. Then, the most expensive card in the set, and one of the star cards, I'd say, is Citadel of Pain. At the end of each player's turn, this deals X damage to that player, where X is the number of untapped lands they control. Again, if they ramp up a lot, if they have, you know, 10 cards on the board, at the end of their turn, if they don't do anything that turn, they're going to lose 10 life, so they want to tap those lands, but Yurlok will deal damage to them no matter what. So it's a lose-lose, this card. It is one of the cards you'd be searching for with the tutors, which we'll show later, because you know, in a budget deck you can't get many good tutors. Then Harsh Mentor, just opponent hatred. When an opponent activates an ability of an artifact, creature, or land, and it isn't a mana ability, it deals 2 damage to him. Could just be used as a little chump blocker, but it's a pretty good effect. Stops opponents from doing too much in the game without dealing damage to him. Then Jun's Charm. So you've got some options. The 2 options you'd probably pick, you wouldn't bother putting 1/1 counters on your creatures, as either exiling an opponent's graveyard if they've got a graveyard-based deck, or it deals 2 damage to each creature. So, you know, sort of a mini board wipe there. Lava Launch, 1 of each colour, and then X. And then X deals X damage to target player or planeswalker and each creature they control. So, again, just a mini person-specific board wipe, and that could kill a player, especially if you get enough free mana from your cards. Then Mana Barbs. When a player taps any land for mana, it deals 1 damage to that player. Very similar to I've forgotten which one it was. It was Burning. Hang on, I'm gonna go back because I've already forgotten. Burning Earth, that's the one. But this one is any land, doesn't have to be non-basic, so it will affect us quite a lot because we have quite a lot of basic lands in here to keep the price down. Then Nightshade Harvester, brand new card. When a land enters under an opponent's control, they lose a life, and then it buffs Nightshade Harvester a bit by putting a 1/1 counter on it. So again, good against ramp-based decks and landfall decks in 2 ways. Then Power Surge, it's Citadel of Hate, but cheaper. This does 1 damage to each land that was untapped at the beginning before the untap step. Obviously this has been errated a bit to make it a bit clearer, but this is Citadel of Pain, but cheaper in price and in mana costs, I believe. Yep, so this one's 2 mana. That was 3 mana, sorry, this one's 2 mana. So didn't realise how good that was. I might snatch that up because that's pretty good for any thing. Oh, but this is each player, so it includes you. Where I believe Citadel... Oh no, Citadel is everyone. My bad. Ignore me. Then Primal Order. Some more non-basic hate. At the beginning of each player's upkeep, it deals damage to that player equal to the number of non-basic lands they control. Do you have a lot of money and have no basic lands? Screw you, you're going to get multiple damage per turn. Then Rakdos Charm. This one, like, I was tempted to remove, but then I was like, sort of have seen how good it could be. So again, just you could either pick a mini board wipe, 1 damage. Well, each creature deals 1 damage to its controller. So you know, going wide hatred, and you know, if players have a lot of tokens, those tokens are going to punch him in the face. Destroy a target artifact for 2 mana, or exile graveyard. 3 pretty good options there. Then Sulfuric Vortex. Just nothing to do with lands, just pure just pure hatred, really. At the beginning of each player's upkeep, it deals 2 damage to that player, so everyone loses 2 life a turn, makes the game go a bit quicker, and if a player would gain life, they gain no life instead. There's only a tiny bit of life gain in this deck, so it wouldn't affect you too much, but it definitely stops people from you know, recovering from all the damage you'll be doing. And the final two, Treacherous Terrain, deals damage to each opponent equals the number of lands they control. Costs quite a lot, 8 mana, but it does also have basic land cycling as well for 2 mana. So if you're late in the, you've got options for early in the game or late in the game. And then Zulaport Cutthroat, a classic really. When another creature you control dies, each opponent loses a life, you gain a life. There's that tiny bit of life gain, and it's just, you know, you're going to at least gain a life and make an opponent. Make each opponent lose a life when Zulaport eventually dies, because it's magic. All the cards will eventually go off the board at one point. Next, part 3, destruction cards. So, you know, it's got red and black in there. I'm going to have some kind of destruction to get rid of your opponent's annoying bits. So, first up, none of those colours. Green, Acidic Slime, 5 mana, come in, destroy an artifact, enchantment or land, but is also quite a good chump blocker for a 2/2 Death Touch. Makes your opponents not want to attack at you with their big stuff. Then Death Sprout, very good, very underrated card. It's 4 mana to destroy a creature, so it is quite a bit, but you also get a tapped basic land on the battlefield, so, you know, I would say cost 3 mana in the long run. It's very good, cheap as well. Then Naturalize, a classic, again 20p, you know, the sort of the cheapest most sites will sell you these kind of cards for, but Artifact or Enchantment, get rid of. It could include your own as well. That's why I've got quite a few of these in here, because you don't want to die to your own effects, that'll just be embarrassing. Putrefy, 3 mana, destroy artifact or creature. Then Reclamation Sage, it's been reprinted so many times the price has gone right down. Destroy artifact or enchantment for 3 mana, and also a good chump blocker. Stone Shaker Shaman, one of the only land destruction based ones. At the end of each player's turn, that player sacrifices an untapped land. It could just make everyone on the board want to tap all their lands, because if they leave a single untapped land, you know, that's that land wasted, so they might as well tap it, but then they'll lose a life. So there's all these little sneaky bits in here which I really like. And then finally, Terminate, a 2 mana destroy creature. Obviously 41p, it's, you know, slightly more expensive than some of the destruction cards, but for 2 mana, very good, because it's been reprinted a couple of times. Next, you know, section 4 I've called Ignore Me. I wasn't sure what to call it. I can't remember why I kept this separate to some of the other sections, but here you are. You've got a Crow and Horse. At the beginning, when it enters, an opponent gains control of it, and at the beginning of your upkeep, each opponent creates a 1/1 soldier. So, you know, it gives you some more chump blockers, but also gives your opponent chump blockers. It's just a cheap way to get a few tokens every turn. It's not the best card, and, you know, easily replaceable. And then Frenzied Saddlebrute, another new card from Commander Legends. All creatures can attack your opponents and planeswalker your opponent's control as if they had haste. So, you know, you can tell your opponents, look, don't attack me, because you're going to have to wait a turn. You might as well attack your opponents now. And, you know, it'll make them want to kill your opponents a bit quicker. Then Ramp. Very important. Got a couple of, I say a couple, quite a lot of Ramp cards, because you're going to be wanting to get loads of these cards out really quick. So you've got Arbor Elf to untap a forest. There's quite a lot of green cards in here, especially Ramp cards, so he's good for that. Or you could replace him for any kind of similar mana dork. They're all roughly the same price. Beanstalk Giant, 3 mana to get a untapped basic land, but also you can get the 7 mana giant out later, and, you know, it's going to be quite a hefty tank. He can win games in good situations. Commander Sphere, just one of the most classic rocks in the game. 41p for him, roughly. It's pretty good. Then Golgari and Gruul Signets. We do also have the 3rd Signet on a bit later. They're so cheap at this point now. They're, you know, cheap as this website will sell them for. Then Harrow, you sack a land and you get 2 in a return. Not bad. Again, this can be easily replaced by another card if you want. It's just in there just to get a bit more sort of like early game getting as many lands as you can before, you know, you start ruining people's days. Lanawar, the classic mana dork, useful in any green deck. Magus of the Candelabra. Now this is one of the uses for the spare mana, so if you have, you know, 6 mana free, you can just use it to untap X target lands. Doesn't have to be your lands. So with cards like I've already forgotten. Citadel of Pain. A Citadel of Pain or Hate, I can't remember. And then Power Surge. You know, at the end of your turn, make your opponents lose, untap their lands, so they lose more life. Again, there's so many ways you could do stuff with this deck. I'm really happy with it. Then, Old Growth Dryads makes everyone ramp. When it enters, each opponent may search for a basic land card, put it on the battlefield tapped, then shuffle their library. You know, not ramp for you, it's ramp for your opponents, but gives them land, and for 1 mana for a 3/3, it's not bad either. Pendant of Prosperity. This is an odd one. I haven't actually seen this one before. It's in one of the Commander precons from 2019, I believe. Not one of the ones that I've seen. But it enters the battlefield under the control of an opponent of your choice, and then for 2 mana and tapping, that opponent draws a card, and then they may put a land from their hand onto the battlefield, and then I, as the owner, may draw a card and put a land from my hand onto the battlefield. So 2-player ramp. You know, they're going to want to ramp, but also allows you to ramp. Very good card. I think this should be used in a few of my decks. There's the other Signet, Rakdos Signet. Rampant Growth, been reprinted so many times. It's 20p. Really good. 2 mana to get a tapped basic land. And then finally, Rootweaver Druid, new card from Commander Legends. I feel like this price is going to go down, definitely, because it's not bad, but it definitely favours your opponents. When it enters, each opponent may search their library for up to 3 basic land cards. They put 1 of their choice under my control, and the other 2 under their control. So I don't get a say in this. I don't get any lands. I do get 3 lands, however they may be completely useless colours. So they'll you know, it's only 2 colours that it shouldn't be, which is white and blue. And you just hope they don't give you either a plains or an island. But, you know, if someone's got a mono green deck, you're going to get a forest. So could be helpful for you too. Then, part 6, draw. There's 4 sort of draw-based cards. You've got Eidolon of Blossoms. When this or another enchantment enters the battlefield, draw a card. There's quite a few enchantments, I believe. There's sort of maybe about 10. I can't remember the exact number. But there's enough where it's worth having this in there. It's not an enchantment-based deck, but there's, you know, you've seen how many enchantments have come. There's literally 2 on this page right now. That's quite good. And it's a good chump blocker as well, because it's an enchantment creature. Harmonise, draw 3 cards for 4 mana, very good in green. Moldavine Reclamation. This is probably the one you'll get rid of first when you're making this deck for yourself, if you find a better upgrade. It's not bad, but for 5 mana, you've got to have a creature die for it to affect itself, but you do gain a life and draw a card when a creature you control dies, which isn't bad. There's not that many creatures to speak of, and you're not getting a bunch of tokens out, or like a bunch of, you know, lots of creatures. And the other one is Seer's Sundial. When a land enters, you may pay 2 colourless. If you do, draw a card. You're not doing too many lands per turn, but again, just another good use for all that spare mana, if you've got any. Then, Tutor. There are 2 Tutor cards which we can afford in this deck, which are Diabolic Tutor, 4 mana Tutor. It's underrated, I think. Obviously, it's 4 mana. It's one of the most expensive tutors you can do. But, you know, search your library for any card, doesn't have to be a creature or anything, and put it in your hand. 45p for it. Perfect. You get a Citadel of Pain, or Hate, I can't remember what it was anymore. And then a Wishcore Talisman, which is perfect for politics. If you get it back, you know, you tap it, search your library for a card, put it in your hand, and then an opponent gains control of it. Only during your turn. if you do some politics with your opponent, ask for it back after, you can tutor twice. It's very good. Obviously, it depends how good you're doing in the game. Then got two multi-use cards. Wasn't sure where to put it, so let's just put them now. You got Overabundance. When a player taps a land for mana, they double that mana, and this deals a damage to him. So a damage per land tapped, and they get double mana. So very good. Pretty much the point of the whole deck in that single card. And Infernal Offering. This was a weird one that I found. So you choose an opponent for each of these options. You can choose different opponents. So you and an opponent sacrifice a creature, and then you both get to draw 2 cards, which isn't bad, especially with all the creature death related cards I've got there. And then you and an opponent return a creature from your graveyard to the battlefield. It can be that same creature. Because that wording is after the sacrifice creature, so very good. Pretty much just draw 2 cards for 5 mana, and get your opponent to draw some, make some friends. Not bad. Then part 9, creatures. So some of these are token spam, some of these are just chump blockers. There's just 3 of them. Firelath, World Sculptor. When it enters, create a 0/1 plant for each basic land you control. Again, you've got quite a lot of basic lands in this, so it's quite good. And it also has the landfall ability where you put 4/1/1 counters on a plant when a land enters. That probably won't happen a lot, but you buff up your plants, make them actually do damage if they block or attack. Predatory Advantage. At the end of each opponent's turn, if they didn't play a creature spell, put a 2/2 lizard into play. So, some players will just be ramping, some players don't have creature-based decks. If they've got like a Zur the Enchanter deck, they've got 2 creatures in their entire deck. But yeah, so that could be very useful for that. And Sequoia Deathkeeper. When another death-related one, when a non-token dies that you control, put a 3/1 black creature with haste onto the battlefield. So, if it dies on your turn, you could just swing it straight away. Then, part 10. Protection. Got Fog, 1 mana, prevent all combat damage that will be dealt this turn. Very useful. Useful in so many situations. It's not just combat damage that's dealt to you, just all combat damage. And then Orbs of Warding. So I have Hexproof. Sorry, well, you have Hexproof. Doesn't infect your creatures or anything like that. It's just you as the player. And then if a creature would deal damage to you, prevent 1 of that damage. Just stops, if someone does that card, that Pegasus card, which brings out, 100 1/1 Pegasi, it will stop them, or stop damage from being dealt to you full stop, pretty much. Then the second to last category is Other. Just two cards which don't really fit in anywhere. So you've got Fires of Yavimaya. Creatures you control have haste. Very good. And then you can sack it and a target creature gets +2/+2 till end of turn. That bit you probably won't do, but 3 mana to give all your creatures haste. Especially good for Yurlok. You can make him tap straight away. And obviously you've got a few big creatures in there which would be able to swing. And then Horizon Stone. Sorry, this is the most expensive card in the deck, not the Citadel, just because it's brand new. But if you would lose unspent mana, that mana becomes colourless instead. It's the answer to Yurlok. That way you don't get mana burn. That colourless mana stays in your mana pool forever. So you'd be tapping all your cards, all your lands, all the time. Then, final category, before we go on to if I had a bigger budget, is land. So, Command Tower, 53p, essential. Evolving Wilds, so cheap at this point, you might as well have it. Because it's a 3 colour deck, you're going to be having quite a lot of search lands just to speed things up. You don't want to be stuck without any red mana, and you've got 5 red cards in your opening hand. Exotic Orchard, again, you've got Tricolour Commander. Very useful. Field of Ruin. Good little destruction. You know, someone's got a Maze of Ith or an annoying land, destroy it, and then everyone shooters. Golgari Rock Farm and Gruul Turf, some of the bounce lands. Obviously, they're not nowhere near the best cards in the deck or in any deck ever, but they're cheap and they're resourceful, and they're very good for a 3-colour deck. You've got Jund Panorama. I didn't actually know this card existed. I think I had it. I think I have it, but I just forget it existed. But it's a myriad landscape, essentially. Doesn't come in tapped. And for 1 mana and tapping, you get a swamp, mountain, or forest onto the battlefield tapped. Then there's the myriad landscape. It can just be a colourless land, but it does come in tapped. And for 2 mana, you get 2 of the same type of lands, basic lands. Then Rakdos, Canarium, and the other bounce land. Savage lands, the TriLand for this colour, 80p, so slightly more expensive than some of the lands, but essential, pretty much just a command tower again. Temple of the False God, you're going to have quite a lot of lands on the battlefield with all these effects, so you're going to be able to use this effect really quickly. And the other Sackland, Terramorphic Expanse. And then the 3 Thrivings from Jumpstart. They are pretty cheap. I thought they were going to be a lot more, but because they come in every deck, I suppose they're quite cheap, especially in the UK. Obviously, they're going to be a lot cheaper in the US, where Jumpstart's been printed a lot more. But yeah, so you choose a colour, and it becomes a dual land of either red, green, black, and then that colour. So gives you choice. So if you've got a lot of green, you just pick the colour that's not green. Then the basic lands. Obviously, for the basic lands, I have not put any prices. I've put them as free. Everyone has at least 9 forests, 5 mountains, and 4 swamps. If you don't, your local game store will have a box of free land, or just ask people around. But yeah, there's quite a lot of basic lands in this. I believe that's 14 altogether. No, hang on. 18 altogether. There we are. Which, about half, I think, is basic lands, which isn't a lot. You can obviously add more with all those, non-basic land damage things. But it's not too bad. Then finally, if I had a bigger budget, what would I add? Abundance. £1, 12p. You basically get to choose whether you draw a land or a non-land whenever you draw a card. So, very good if you need some... if you're desperate for a land, or if you have an overabundance of land. Arcane Signet, £2 for it, roughly about now. A much needed mana rock in any deck, but yeah, just a bit too much for this deck. Zuzo the Punisher, just Ankh of Mishra, but as a creature. When a land enters, it deals 2 damage to that controller. You don't need it in the deck, but if you want more when a land enters damage, there you are. Acidic Soil deals 1 damage to each player for each land they control. £2.50 is a bit much for that, I think. Obviously, you're going to have quite a lot of land with all the ramp, so it may not be the best. Soul Ring, just about £3 now for it. It's Soul Ring. What more do you need to say? But I would say that's worth the money. If you're gonna go above the £45, that is what you should go for first. Mana Flare. It's weird. It's when a player taps land, they add 1 of that type. It's the double mana kind of card. But for some reason, it's £5 just because it hasn't been printed in a while. Umbral Mental. For 3 mana and untapping, this creature gets +2/+2 until end of turn. It's a 0 equip enchantment. 0 equip equipment artifact. However, Yurlok taps for 3 mana. So you could just... It's an infinite combo. Not a game-ending one because you can stop at any point. but you could just give each opponent 100 mana, and they'll all lose it all, and you'll win the game. That is, you know, again, if it was under £5, I'd put it as a £50 deck budget and put that in, but it's just annoying that's a bit too much. But I think this is the card you should go for in this deck. I don't know why I didn't put it in there and get rid of a few other more expensive cards. I've just realised how good it is while talking about it. Then, Price of Glory. When a player taps a land during when it's not their turn, destroy that land. You don't have any, you know, instant speed stuff really. You've got some, you know, enchantment and stuff, destruction, but majority of the time that could probably wait till your turn. But it just stops your opponents from doing stuff on your, you know, instant speed countering you and stuff. But £6.50 is a bit steep for it now. Helix Pinnacle. This one's really expensive. This one's gone up, I believe, because of the Zaxara deck, the X-cost tribal Zaxara deck. So I've got it in this as well. But over £8.50, that X in the text, you'll be pumping all your spare mana into that to put counters on it, and then if there are 100 more tower counters on it, you win the game at the beginning of your upkeep. Then final two, Assassin's Trophy. 2 mana, destroy permanent, and that player may search for a basic land, put it onto the battlefield untapped. Good for you, good for your opponents, but £10. Man, this has gone up in price. Then Mana Web. You can have better cards than this for pennies. When a land enters, tap all the lands they control, but only of that land's colour. So if they've got a 5-colour deck and they put in a forest, they only have to tap their forests. You can get much better for much cheaper. It's just in there to show more examples of what there is. But yeah, there's the Yurlok budget deck for less than £45. Thank you guys very much for watching. It's my first one of these. Please let me know what I'm doing right, what I'm doing wrong. I don't really watch a lot of these budget deck techs because otherwise I'm going to get ideas, and these ideas my wallet cannot sustain. But yeah, please comment below if you know of any other cards that may have been good that I may have missed. I did quite a lot of research into this, but I know I'm going to miss some good cards. I mean, just like the Umbral Mental card there. You know, that should have been in the deck. I've just realised how stupidly good that is. But yeah, thank you guys for watching. I'll hopefully do another one of these soon, and I will catch you guys in the next video.